You've been told the Nazis were crazed ideologues who rose out of a vacuum, forged a military juggernaut overnight, and set out to dominate the world. Textbooks act like Germany clawed its way into tanks and aircraft purely through rage and nationalism. But here's the twist. If you trace the money, the real origin point isn't Berlin. It's New York. A handful of American banks and corporations didn't just trade with Hitler, they bankrolled him, equipped him, sustained him, and kept the money pipelines open even after American soldiers began dying overseas. And the shocking part, several made bigger profits during the war than before it began. Stay with this, because by the end you'll understand exactly why this chapter never shows up in your classroom history. And the same corporations that once profited from mass murder are still shaping your world right now. So let's rewind to 1933. Hitler has just taken power. Germany's economy is shattered. Versailles buried them under reparations. The hyperinflation of the 1920s erased savings. Unemployment is 30%. People can't afford food. The Reichsmark is worthless, and Hitler is promising national revival. But here's the part that never makes it into the textbooks. You don't build an army with rhetoric. You need steel. You need fuel. You need money. Enormous amounts of it. And Germany in 1933 has none of it. So where did it come from? Picture this. Wall Street during the roaring 20s. American banks are overflowing with capital. They're lending to everyone, especially Germany. Because even though Germany lost World War I and owes billions in reparations, American financiers smell opportunity. The Dawes Plan of 1924, J.P. Morgan, Dillon Reed, Chase National Bank, they restructure German debt. They issue bonds and tie Germany directly to American credit. More than $475 million flow from the U.S. into Germany between 1924 and 1931. That's over $8 billion in today's money. Not aid, loans with interest and heavy influence. American bankers effectively run Germany's financial system through the Dawes Committee. And when Hitler takes over, he inherits the entire architecture. And instead of withdrawing, American banks push in deeper. Now for the jaw dropper. Standard Oil, the Rockefeller Empire, cuts a deal with IG Farben, the chemical conglomerate that later produced Zyklon B for the gas chambers, joint ventures, technology transfers, and the critical piece, synthetic fuel. Germany has no oil, none. No colonies, no Middle Eastern access. So how did the Luftwaffe fly? How did panzers crush Europe? Standard Oil handed them the tech to turn coal into gasoline, the hydrogenation process. Without it, Germany's military grinds to a halt within 6 months. Standard Oil knew exactly what it was enabling. They had staff on the ground, they received reports, and they kept the partnership alive after 1939, after Poland, after war was officially underway. Let that settle in. The company that became Exxon provided Hitler with the fuel technology his entire war machine depended on. And IBM, the computer giant, they didn't just offload punch card machines to Germany. They didn't just supply machines to Germany. They tailored them specifically for identifying and tracking Jews. Every major camp ran on IBM punch card systems, prisoner files, transport lists, labor assignments, mortality reports, selections, who is sent where, who works, who dies. All processed through IBM technology. IBM's German branch, DHOMAG, serviced the equipment for the entire war, sent technicians, updated software equivalents, and reported back to New York. Headquarters collected royalties. Every punch card printed, every machine leased brought in revenue. IBM earned money by streamlining genocide. They didn't pull triggers, they made mass murder organized, automated, and scalable. And when the war ended, there were no indictments, no penalties. Today, IBM remains one of the largest tech firms in the world. Now Ford Motor Company. Henry Ford was a virulent anti-Semite. He published the Dearborn Independent, a paper blaming Jews for everything, communism, finance, conflict. He even distributed the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, a fabricated conspiracy. Hitler admired him. He kept Ford's portrait in his office, cited him as inspiration. And Ford's German division, Ford Werke, didn't shut down when the war began. They increased production. They built trucks for the Wehrmacht, engines for military vehicles, and used forced labor pulled from concentration camps. After the U.S. entered the war in 1941, Ford Werke was classified by the German state as a vital military supplier. And here's the unbelievable part. After the war, Ford demanded reimbursement from the U.S. government for Allied bomb damage to its German factories. He wanted American taxpayers to compensate him for strikes against facilities producing vehicles for the Nazi army. The audacity is staggering. Then comes General Motors. Its German subsidiary Opel produced trucks that carried Wehrmacht troops across Europe and engines for Luftwaffe aircraft. By 1939, Opel was building half of Germany's trucks and a third of its armored vehicles. The Blitzkrieg that crushed Poland and France rolled forward on GM machinery. GM leadership retained oversight the entire time, and after Pearl Harbor, when the US was officially at war with Germany, Opel kept manufacturing. GM insisted it had no control over its foreign branches. Translation: the profits were too good to walk away, and when the war ended, GM sued the US government for $33 million in compensation for Allied bombing of its German plants that produced Nazi war equipment, and they won. They got the payout. Chase National Bank, today J.P. Morgan Chase, did the unthinkable. In 1940, after Nazi forces marched into Paris, Chase's Paris branch froze Jewish accounts, assisted occupation authorities in liquidating assets, and helped strip wealth from families being deported to their deaths. The branch continued operating under Nazi rule until 1944, 3 full years after Pearl Harbor. An American bank facilitating Nazi theft while American soldiers were dying across Europe. In the 1990s, internal documents emerged confirming Chase executives weren't ignorant. They received updates, approved actions, and kept the branch running because it made money. DuPont supplied chemicals to Germany. Union Banking Corporation, overseen by Prescott Bush, yes, the father of future President George H.W. Bush, held Nazi-linked assets and helped finance German steel output. ITT Corporation sold communications gear to the German military and maintained negotiations with Nazi officials throughout the conflict. And here's the brutal truth. None of this was accidental. These weren't rogue office managers freelancing in wartime chaos. These were decisions made at the highest levels. Boards authorized them, CEOs signed off, shareholders reaped profits, and Washington looked away until the political cost became too high to ignore. Now the numbers, because the scale defies comprehension. IG Farben exploited more than 80,000 slave laborers at Auschwitz alone, worked them until they collapsed, producing synthetic fuel and rubber, and IBM's punch card systems tracked every one of them. Ford Verke produced 78,000 vehicles for the Wehrmacht. Opel manufactured another 29,000. Combined, that accounted for over 1/3 of Germany's entire military transportation network. Without American-made trucks, the Nazis don't blitz through France, they don't push toward Moscow, they don't transport millions of Jews to extermination sites. The Holocaust demanded industrial precision, and American corporations delivered it for profit. Here's the part that should enrage you. After the war, almost none of these firms faced real punishment. Yes, the Nuremberg industrialist trials targeted IG Farben and Krupp leaders, but the American companies were shielded because Washington needed them for rebuilding Europe. The Marshall Plan required factories. The Cold War required industry. So Ford, GM, IBM, all received federal contracts, Marshall Plan money, and political protection. Their archives were sealed, classified, hidden for decades. It took half a century before researchers pieced together the full record. In 1998, lawsuits finally forced disclosures. Survivors testified. Documents emerged, letters, memos, business agreements, proving executives knew, proving they profited, and the settlements were insulting. In 2000, German firms created a $5 billion reparations fund for slave laborers. Ford and GM contributed a combined $20 million, a rounding error compared to their wartime earnings. IBM paid nothing, denied involvement into the 2000s 6 decades after the fact, and settled only behind closed doors. No confession, no apology, just pay off money to silence the evidence. Here's where it turns even darker. This wasn't an anomaly, it's the pattern. American corporations partnering with brutal regimes because the profits are irresistible. And it's happening right now. Look at China, Apple, Nike, Tesla, manufacturing in Xinjiang, where Uyghur Muslims are held in camps, subjected to forced labor, mass surveillance, and cultural erasure. The U.S. State Department officially labels it genocide. And American companies? They lobby against sanctions, claim their supply chains are too tangled, insist they can't confirm labor conditions. It's the exact same script. In the 1930s, the excuse was that they couldn't control foreign subsidiaries. Today, it's that supply networks are complex. Different wording, identical logic, same incentive. Apple pulled in $365 billion last year. A portion of that comes from Chinese production tied to coerced labor, and they resist every effort to regulate it. Google engineered a censored search engine for China, Project Dragonfly. It would have suppressed results, erased Tiananmen Square, buried human rights information. It was scrapped after internal backlash, but the message was obvious. 1 billion new users is worth compromising on principle. Facebook's platforms facilitated genocide in Myanmar. The Rohingya killings, over 25,000 dead, were organized through Facebook posts. The company apologized, promised reforms, and continued operating in Myanmar because shutting down means losing engagement and losing ad revenue. Oil giants maintain partnerships with Saudi Arabia despite the Khashoggi murder and the devastation in Yemen, driven by U.S.-supplied weapons. Defense contractors sell arms to dictatorships. Tech firms build digital cages for authoritarian states. Cisco helped construct China's Great Firewall. Oracle provides databases used to track dissidents. It's not a carbon copy of the 1930s, but the ethical equation is identical. Profit versus principles, and profit wins. Here's the harsh truth no one likes to say. Corporations don't possess ethics, they possess shareholders. And shareholders demand returns, rising stock prices, quarterly beats. If working with a genocidal government is legal and lucrative, they'll do it. Executives will rationalize everything. We create jobs. We have to stay competitive. It's complicated. And they'll donate to charities, sponsor museums, fund scholarships, burnish their public images, the same way Ford and GM did, the same way IBM did. You can build hospitals with one hand and enable atrocities with the other. As long as the hospitals are visible and the atrocities are hidden, the public remembers you as a savior. That's how the system works. So what do you do with all of this? First, recognize that World War II wasn't only fought with rifles and tanks. It was bankrolled. American financiers re-engineered Germany's debts. U.S. corporations supplied the trucks, engines, and fuel. American data systems cataloged victims. Without Wall Street, Hitler can't rebuild. Without Ford and GM, the Wehrmacht doesn't advance. Without IBM, the Holocaust never becomes mechanized slaughter. They didn't wear armbands, but they empowered the entire machine for profit. Second, accountability was a mirage. Most executives died wealthy. Most companies paid token settlements decades later, and they're still in business, still benefiting. The pattern survives because real consequences never came. Third, look at where your money goes. The phone in your hand may have been assembled by Uyghur labor in camps. Those sneakers, same story. That Tesla, Musk partners with Chinese surveillance-linked suppliers. Your dollars fuel this. Not deliberately, but they do. And corporations rely on your silence. Fourth, this isn't rumor or speculation. It's documented. Congressional inquiries, lawsuits, archives, declassified files, it's all available, just never taught, never emphasized. Because the companies involved remain influential, keep lobbying, shape what's remembered. If this is hitting a nerve, if you're realizing school left out the most important chapter, good. Because this story doesn't stop in 1945. It cycles. New nations, new industries, same incentives, same rationalizations. And unless people know, unless the truth gets loud, the cycle continues. So hit that like button if you're done with the sanitized version of history. Subscribe, because I'm not stopping. There's more, a lot more. And drop a comment naming the modern company you think is running this play today, because I guarantee you're financing something you'd despise if you knew the details. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp. History hasn't ended. It's just better disguised. And the same families who profited from Hitler, they're still here. Different brands, same lineage, same strategy. We just stopped noticing.